Hey guys, it's nerdnic, and this is the nnChipmunk V2 build video. Now if you don't already have your plans, head over to nerdnic.com and get them downloaded. They're totally free, and make sure you check out the flight video if you haven't seen it already. Now before you get started, you're going to want to make sure you have all 4 of your servos centered up. Now you can use 9 grams, or these are Metal Gear 12 grams. I prefer these, they don't strip out as easy, and they can perform a little better at high speeds. For 3 of them, you're going to drill out the normal size for your push rods, and then one of them is going to be extra large. This guy actually is going to be the elevator servo, and 2 control rods are going to go into one hole here. So make sure that hole is big enough to accommodate 2 of your control rods. So if you're building from one of the build kits, go ahead and get all your pieces broken out now. We're going to go ahead and get started with the fuselage. Make sure you have the front belly plate, the tail belly plate, and then these 3 formers ready to go. Now the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and get the fuselage ready. Now you'll notice I still have this midsection connected to the fuselage. If you started by scratch building this, if you've cut everything out by hand, make sure you don't damage this piece. We do need this. This is the bottom plate for the hatch. If you are using the build kit, just go ahead and pop this piece out as clean as you can and set that aside. We'll come back to this later. So what we're going to do is go ahead and clean out these channels of foam here. If you fold this over, you can kind of just rock your finger. You'll notice there's a second section here. This is going to come out as well. A barbecue skewer is going to run in here. So we're basically going to clean out all this foam by just gently rocking it with our thumb. And we're going to do that on both sides. Now you notice some of the foam is getting left over. It's sticking to the paper here. We're going to go back and clean that all up. We want to have a nice clean channel here. So if you're having as hard of a time as I am, then what you want to do is go back with one of your barbecue skewers and just make sure you clean up and get all that foam off of there. So it's just bare paper. So what you're going to do is you're going to take 2 barbecue skewers, and we're actually going to run these right inside along the sidewalls here. So go ahead and cut these to length. These will both be the same length. So if you start your marker on one, you can line them both up and cut them at the same time. Go. Should go right to the edge. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and glue these in. One thing to keep note of though is that we must keep this channel here clean. We're still going to do a fold over, and so we have to make sure that the skewer doesn't fall into this space here. So while it's being glued, we're going to use a scrap piece of foam to brace it. So what I want you to do is take your hot glue gun, and we're going to glue out a 45 from the beginning to the end of the channel. And go ahead and set it down, put your skewer in place, and then use your scrap piece of foam to make sure that it stays in place. What I'm going to do is clean up some of this glue that smeared off, and then I'm going to make sure this stays open. Go and let that dry. Okay, we're going to go ahead and do the same thing on the other side. So now the reason we've done this is this design features a removable hatch. And that ends up actually making the plane quite a bit weaker and this section, especially if you were to nosedive or have a rough landing, and the nose tend to break off. So these skewers help to reinforce this area so that you can take a little more beating. Okay, so now that the skewer's in, we're going to go ahead and test fit to make sure that this nothing gets in the way of this alignment. So one thing you want to do is note that this section of the tail is actually higher than the forward section, and so you can't just fold this over while on the flat table because this is higher. So you have to actually hang these over the edge before you can fold it over. So bring it to the edge of the table, make sure you can rock it up, and this should, the side plate should go next to the top plate. And make sure you have a nice solid fit and the skewer doesn't obstruct anything. If it does, you can go ahead and adjust it, but mine came out nice and clean. So that's good. Before we glue up the sides, we're going to remove this tab section here. We're just going to pull off the top bit of foam like that. And then we're going to go ahead and glue this and fold it over. This just helps seal the plane a little bit, or to seal the nose so you don't have any lifting or any weakening of this area of the foam as time goes on. So we'll go ahead and glue that down. And then last thing we're going to do before we fold the sidewalls up is we're going to actually reinforce these holes. Now if you're building with a standard flight test power pod, you will not use these holes. This plane is compatible with the swappable series, Power Pack C, so you can use a normal power pod. If you do, then these are the holes you're going to use, the ones back here. If you're using my power pod, then you're going to use these two holes up here. You're going to forego using the front skewers that flight test use it to secure the pod, and you're going to use just two going in here. So you'll either want to reinforce the back two if you're using the flight test power pod, or these forward four if you're going to be using my power pod. Now I've already gone and cut some plastic reinforcements. If you have a gift card or you bought your kids a toy that came in some plastic, you can use that. Basically these are just thin sheets of plastic with a hole drilled in them the size of a barbecue skewer, and these give the pod connection a significant amount of strength. It seems really basic, but you can nosedive the plane and the power pod doesn't come out, doesn't rip the fuselage or anything. So this is critical to do. I would not recommend building this plane without doing this. If you're not reinforcing these holes, you're significantly reducing the life of the plane just from the basic wear and tear of having the motor supported by, wood going through foam. This makes a huge difference. So just a little bit of glue is enough. What this does is it just spreads out the pressure. So now when the pod is jammed around or anything, you have, instead of just a single hole, very small amount of surface area, you have a large amount of surface area. So it's just a lot stronger. Okay, so now that we've reinforced our power pod holes, we're going to go ahead and glue these side walls. So to do that, again, I'm going to hang the tail section over the edge of the table so that I don't have any alignment issues. And I'm going to go ahead and add some glue. In this case, because we're running the sidewall on the bottom of the table and then next to the side plate, we're going to put a lot of glue on the side plate itself. And then we're going to run a little bit of glue here next to the skewer on the paper, because this is going to fold over and glue to the skewer there. And then we'll continue going down on this side. Now if you are using the flight test power pod, you won't want to glue this area. Just go ahead and skip that so you don't have any overlap there. Alright, and the last thing, make sure you have a square ready. I don't use any fancy square, I just use tape. This lets me set up a nice right angle on the fly. So we're going to go ahead and get a hot glue gun, get our first bead of glue started, continue on the paper. I'm not using the flight test power pod, so I'll just go right on through there. No worries. Okay. Tail's hanging over the edge of the table. I'm going to go ahead and fold this up, pressing down to the table. And then I'm going to hold both these tabs flat while I hold this in place. Check on this side as well. Go hold in place. You're going to want to let this dry fully before you do the other side. The other side now. Alright, now that your fuselage is together, we're going to go ahead and set that aside, and we're going to grab the tail belly plate and the nose belly plate, and we're going to go ahead and get these guys prepared. So on the nose, we're going to crack this guy off, peel the foam away, throw it away, and then on these sides, we're going to go ahead and peel the foam clean off there. Again, just like on the fuselage, if you had any excess foam left over, go ahead and clean it out. Do the same thing on the tail. We'll go ahead and crack the sides. Now this one's a little different because all of this back part is going to be bare paper. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my razor and I'm going to just 50% cut these sides here so that I can crack this and get the paper off properly. So I'm going to go ahead and peel that guy off, and then I'm going to finish these sides. Be gentle right on this area because it is thin paper. But don't worry, if you rip it, you can just tape it or use a little glue. Fix it right up. Okay, and then this little tab here comes out. This is a little exhaust hole. And there you are with the tail. So we're going to start off by doing the nose piece. And basically what you're going to do is you're going to first glue this tab over like we did on the top of the fuselage. This is just, again, to help prevent the paper from lifting or separating there on landings. So the way this lines up is right at the beginning of the airfoil cutout. You're going to have the belly plate line up right there. So it's going to line up perfectly with the cutout, and that brings you up most of the way up the nose there. Now what I like to do, just to make sure there's a small amount of curve here, to make sure that this doesn't crease or anything. If you take your hand, you can kind of rub the foam a little bit. And what this is going to let you do is bend it just slightly. You can put a little pressure on it now. And we don't need to remove the paper because that makes it quite a bit weaker. And I want this part to be strong for your landings. So go ahead and just rub it, and you can get a little bit of bend out of it. And now it'll put right into place. So we're going to go ahead and glue that in place. What I like to do is focus my glue on the belly plate itself. So I'll start about 1/4 inch from the end here, and then stop about 1/4 inch on this side as well. And we're going to do both at the same time. So I'm going to rub my glue around a little bit just to get it on the paper as well. So we're doing a 45, and I'm going back just to make sure it spreads on the paper too. Okay, now I'm going to take my nose piece, line up on this side and on this side, then I'm going to flip this over. I'm going to squeeze the sidewalls and press down. I'm just going to go ahead and hold this until it dries. Okay, once that's done, we're going to go ahead and finish up the tail section. Now, what you're going to do on the back side is just go ahead and pinch the tail until they come together, and that should give you enough bend there. Really what we're going to do is put a little bit of glue here and here just to hold this in place. So I'm going to go ahead and add a drop of glue here and here. Okay, now that the tail section is glued, we're going to go ahead and flip it over. And again, we want to be mindful of the fact that this is higher than the rest of the fuselage, so go ahead and hang it over the tail, or hang the tail over the side of the table, excuse me, and grab your tail piece. And this guy's going to line up, again, just like the front, right at the end of the cutout for the wing. It's going to sit right there. Now this guy does not need any bend, it's actually a straight shot. And for alignment, what you want to check is to make sure that this little guy has enough space to fold up over and then flip over just slightly. So you're going to want to align the width of these guys based on how wide the paper is here. So that's going to be your guide there. The paper should be just the right length to cover the exposed foam there. So we're going to go ahead and pop this off. Now we got to do this whole thing at once, so it's going to be a little more difficult to do. So we're going to go ahead and start, and I'm going to glue all the way up to the exhaust hole here. And again, we're going to do the 45. I want to make sure that I get some glue on the paper as well. And then we're going to go ahead and do the other side. Careful here, this is where you're going to burn yourself. Turn this thing around. Done that many times. Get some glue on the paper. Okay, we're ready. We're going to go ahead and put this in place. Alignment's good. There. It's all the way in. I'm going to go ahead and turn this over now. And again, I'm going to push down, flat, and then I'm going to squeeze the sidewalls. Now, if you put as much glue as I did, you're going to have some excess, so make sure you move around a little bit so you don't glue your fuselage to the table. Okay? So we're going to go ahead and hold this for about 30 seconds until it dries. Okay, now you should be left with a real clean tail. You have a little bit of overlap here, and again, we're just going to glue this down and fold it, glue it down and fold it right over there. Okay, so we're going to flip it up, and I'm going to add just a little bit of glue. Up here. Should be nice and clean. And then we're going to go ahead and fold this guy over. A little tiny bit of glue there and there. And there's your tail section. Okay, we're going to go ahead and put our formers on. So go ahead and grab former with these excess tabs here, this guy, and this guy. What we're going to do, I'm going to remove this air intake here as well. That should already be gone. We're going to go ahead and take this front guy and we're going to pull these tabs off. This one actually sits right over here, and these little tabs fold over. Now, the reason these tabs are there is because this foam, after a lot of use with the hatch, will start to fray. These little tabs help to keep everything nice and tidy. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and put a little bit of glue on this corner, and then on the tabs. So there's the corner, tab, tab. And then we're going to go ahead and put it in place right over the little notch. And then these go flush down. And this is important that you get this as flush and even as possible, because this plate here, this front plate, is what's going to secure the initial tongue of the hatch. So I want to make sure it's nice and lined up and flat, and that this guy is also up, straight up and down. Should be perpendicular with the fuselage. Go ahead and let that dry. What I like to do too, just to make sure this is nice and strong, since it will have a lot of stress from the hatch, is to go ahead and add an additional layer of glue here, since it's not glued down completely on all sides. So we're going to let that dry, and then we're going to grab this guy, and he's going to go right here in this slot. So go ahead and pop out your slot if you haven't already. And he just glues straight in there. So again, we want to make sure that he is perpendicular straight up and down from the fuselage. So I'm going to add a little glue on there, a little bit on this side, just so it's nice and strong. Now what I want to do here is clean up any excess glue that may have sprayed out on the sides here. This needs to be nice and flush. Okay. Go ahead and let that dry. And then this last guy, he actually sits back over here. And what this helps do is, one, give the poster board some shape, but also the vertical stabilizer runs through both of these, really helps strengthen up the tail, make it really rigid. And it looks really cool. The Chipmunk actually has a little ridge coming off of the vertical stabilizer. So I want to capture that. So for this one, we're going to add a little bit of glue on the bottom and then right on the sides as well. And then he's just going to sit right there in place. Okay, so now for the hatch, you're going to go ahead and grab the hatch. You're going to grab this former which sits in the middle there, and you're going to grab the plate that we cut out of the fuselage. You're going to need that. So the way this works is you're going to first go ahead and remove these cavities. On both sides here. And this is going to end up being an A-fold, so that the former is actually going to fit on top. It's going to go above the belly plate. So above, like that, on both sides. So you're going to go ahead and glue those, get them nice and square. I'm going to add just a little bit of glue here. I don't want any overspilling, so I'm going to stop about 1/4 inch on both sides. I'm going to go ahead and flip that guy up. And again, I do want this to be square, so I'm going to go ahead and push this against the table here. And then I'm going to use my tape to make sure I do have a 90-degree angle. This is critical because if you don't glue this former, and then the two fuselage formers that we glued on square, then the hatch won't fit properly, or maybe at all. So this is key here, that you get these all squared up. That one's good, and if there's any excess glue, make sure you remove that. Really, it's this angle here that needs to be flush and clean, and this one as well. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and do the same thing on this side now. Add a little glue here. Stop. And then we're going to fold that up. I'm going to use the table here to just keep it in place. Okay, now you'll notice there's a little cutout here. This is actually for either a magnet or possibly Velcro. So go ahead and take this tab out. You don't need that. You can decide how you want to actually secure it down. But essentially, the way this is going to work is we're going to take this piece, this belly piece here, and it's going to actually go back into its slot. Now you notice there's a little tongue here that actually fits right in. So the front gets notched in so it can't get blown away or anything. So that's going to fit down in there. You're going to just set it in place so it's nice and flush. And then this top guy is going to sit on top of it fully. So just to make sure everything lines up nice, I'm going to go ahead and test fit it. This front former should be the same. Back former should also be the same. If you have any issues, something's off, something's crooked, fix it now. Do whatever adjustment you need to do because you won't be able to do it later. So it looks good. It's a nice fit. Now what I need to do is actually glue on the bottom of the hatch so that this piece becomes connected. Because essentially what you end up with is a slotted piece that's going to be sitting inside of the fuselage, which is this piece that has a tongue on it. So you can kind of scoop it in and secure the hatch that way. So to do that, everything's flush here. It looks good. I'm going to add some glue on this side, this top plate here, just like that. And then I'm going to take my hatch and I'm going to set it right back on like I did before. And now this is just going to dry, and let it dry for a good amount of time, because once you pull this off, you've got to pull that bottom plate with it. So if you pull it too early, you're going to lose this setup here. Make sure from the alignment perspective that these side pieces are flush. It's not hanging one way or the other. And then again, these guys are good here. So just put some pressure, make sure it's nice and flat, let it dry. Okay, so now that you've gotten that done, just keep in mind from here on out To remove the hatch, you have to lift from the back because the front does have that tongue piece in there. So go ahead and crack from the back and you should get that piece pulled out. And there you have your belly plate glued to the hatch. And just to make sure it does fit, I'm going to go ahead and lead in with the nose. There it is. And it seals down nicely. Cool thing about having this piece attached is that it does continue to add some of that strength that it adds back some of that strength that you lost by cutting a hole in the fuselage. That torsion when the plane is doing a roll or whatever it is, this is going to be strengthened a lot compared to, if you had it off, or if you just had a hole there. So this is a very strong design. Last thing you got to do is crack this tab out because we need one more former in there. So this last former, we're going to go ahead and put it right in there. So this one does not have any stress on it, so I don't want to worry too much. But I do want it to be straight because this piece does help the cockpit align. Okay, go ahead and set that aside. Okay, we're going to go ahead and set the fuselage aside and get started on the tail feathers. So the first thing you'll notice is that these look quite a bit different than other tail feathers you've built of a Dollar Tree foam plane. If you haven't built one of my planes before, especially, they'll look weird. But essentially the way this is going to work is the horizontal stabilizer is actually going to fold over kind of like a wing does to give you a true airfoil shape. So it's not just a flat piece of foam. And then on the vertical stabilizers, you have two mirrored parts that actually sandwich together and create a similar effect where you have a 2 sheets thick piece of foam here, and it'll be beveled and everything so that you have a proper airfoil, and it's much stronger than just a single sheet of foam. So we're going to go ahead and start with the horizontal stabilizer. The first thing I'm going to do is this channel here. This is for a barbecue skewer. So I'm going to go ahead and grab a skewer and I'm going to pick this out. Now if you're building a very light version of the nnChipmunk, you probably can skip this step. Basically we're adding a barbecue skewer for strength, but if you're running a very, maybe an indoor flyer or just a very modest 200 watt motor or something, you wouldn't need to do this. I'm adding this because this horizontal stabilizer with this setup can take you from going 30 miles an hour to over 100 miles an hour, and it'll hold up. You're only adding a few grams worth of weight, so it's it's a good safety insurance to do it anyway. But it's not required if you're running a lighter power setup. So just like with the fuselage, we're going to have to cut this to length. So I'm going to put it just into place here, get my alignment and cut it. And just as a test fit, I want to make sure that it goes in flush. It sure does. And we're going to fill the cavity with glue so that it is oozing out. We want a full coverage here. So we're going to go ahead and set this guy into place, and I'll use my razor here to press it down. Actually I won't. I'm going to use a barbecue skewer to press this into place so it goes down flat, touching the bottom of the paper. Once that's done, we're going to get our scrap foam, and again we're going to make sure we don't have any leftover bubbles here. I added way too much glue, so I'm going to go over it one more time, making sure it's nice and flat. And now, while this dries, you're going to want to hold the sheet flat. If for some reason it dried weird, you might get an unintended curve or additional airfoil that you don't want. So go ahead and let this dry. It's going to take a bit because there's so much glue in there. So maybe you set some tape down and go get a drink of water or something. But make sure that this stays flat on against the table as it dries. Okay. Now that that's dry, we're going to go ahead and peel off the paper around the edges. There should be a green line here if you're building from the plans. that indicates just to cut the foam so you can peel the paper away. If you're building from the kit, it should already be ready to just peel. So if you go ahead and grab that, you see it just peels off real nice. We're going to go ahead around the edge here and straight up down. Do it on the other side as well. If you peel a little bit more, don't worry, it doesn't actually matter. Then we're doing this side as well. And actually, before you get too far, if you're building from the kit, these should be black cut throughs. They should already be marked. If you are building from scratch, make sure you take your razor blade and cut all the way through on these indicator lines. What this does is it gives you an outline so that once it's built, you can go back and finish cutting the control surfaces. Okay? So in the kit, it's already cut through for you. If you're doing it from the plans, make sure that these are cut through, because as you peel this paper off, you're going to lose these reference lines if you haven't cut all the way through the foam. Okay? So make sure you do that before you peel this away. Again, don't worry if it gets caught up, you can go back. If for some reason it's not cut all the way, you can just go ahead and, like I said, just cut through the paper just enough so it's cut. And then that should come up real easy. Yeah. Okay, then the last place is this front guy here. I'm going to go ahead and peel that paper away as well. What this is doing is it's setting a boundary for how much bevel you need to add to each surface. Okay, so on the leading edge, you can fold this over now, and what you need to do is take your razor blade and do a bevel up to where you took the paper off. So don't go in really deep, just bevel from the center line to where you remove the paper. And what this does is it gives you a consistent airfoil. So every time you build this plane, anyone who builds it, as long as you do the bevels on the appropriate lines, you'll get a consistent airfoil. If you bevel differently, then you're going to change the way the airfoil is. If for some reason on your first pass you don't get it, go back with the second one to make sure you're coming right up to that paper line. Alright, do that on the other side as well. So now you have the leading edge bevel done. We're going to go ahead and work on the rest of it. Now these bevels are much, much wider. And the idea here is that you take the bevel and from the beginning of the paper line to the trailing edge, you bevel at an angle. So it goes from one sheet of foam thickness here down to just the paper. So you would angle it appropriate to the width of the bevel. Okay. So to do that, I'm actually going to grab a knife and use that. You can use a razor blade if you are. Make sure you have it fully exposed, and you'll have to do multiple passes to try and do this. But as you can see, like, this is a very wide bevel, and you can't really even hold the blade at that point. So using a knife, this is just a serrated kitchen knife, you can kind of saw it away a little better. And to do that, what you need to do is actually go to the edge of the table, because it's not safe to hold it in your hands. So you want to go to the edge of the table and line it up. Now for demonstration purposes, I'm going to go ahead and grab some wood just to simulate the edge of the table so you guys can see here. So imagine this is your table you're working on, this is the edge. I'm going to go ahead and put the foam right up to the edge, and then I'm going to take my knife, and at a angle less than the required angle. So really I would want to do very deep cuts here, but you can't do it in one swipe, so I want to do multiple. So I'm going to start off by just doing my first cut here, and I'm just focusing not to go through the paper, okay? So I'm watching my blade, I'm going slow, and I'm just making sure I don't cut through the paper, okay? So I'm just cutting a chunk off here. You can do this with a sanding block too if you're concerned about cutting yourself, which is probably the smarter way to do it, but this works as well. But a sanding block would be a nice, easy way to do this as well. Now that I have my first cut, I'm going to come in a little deeper this time. I'm cutting a little bit more meat off. We're getting closer there. And on this next pass, I should be able to go from, where I'm left to the paper line. Okay, so what you should have now is a pretty rough looking cut. It's not perfect, but what I can do now is I can go back with the razor blade and kind of clean up this end section. That's the more important part, is getting that really clean, because you want to make sure that you have a very clean trailing edge. But the rest of this can be a little bit rougher. It's not a problem. Okay, so now I'm going to take my razor blade and I'm going to try and clean up this edge just so that it's nice and clean. Now again, doing this in the air is not smart. So put it at the edge of the table so you can get a nice clean edge. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to put it right on the edge of the table, and I'm going to just run my blade right along. Really careful to make sure that it's nice and clean. If you cut through the foam or anything, it's fine. You can repair with a little glue. No one will notice. So now what you want to be left with is, again, like we talked about before, you want one sheet of thickness down to just the paper. So it should be a nice gradual curve. Go ahead and do that around all edges and the sides. Okay, now once you're done, you should have some not so pretty, but it's okay, tapered edges. They should be beveled on all edges at this point. What we're going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and do a fold over. I'm going to take both, put the bottom piece flat on the table, take both my top sides, I'm going to fold them over together. Just do it like this here. We're going to get these going. They should line up right in the middle together, like that. Your center piece there should be nice and square. If one is off, it means your bevel might be incorrect. You may have to go remove some more foam to get it further over, okay? But these lined up nice, and I'm going to make sure I sandwich it down all the way over the edge. Okay? Now from this point forward, as we're working on this, we're going to keep the bottom flat as best as we can. We want more curve on the top than we do on the bottom. And that's just going to naturally happen if you're working with the flat table on the bottom side. Okay? So the way this is going to work is, what we have to do is add some glue on these leading edges to make sure the foam, stays nice and put and solid. And then we're going to add a little bit of glue on the top here to make sure that they stay flat. Okay? What we're not going to do is add any glue yet on any of the beveled areas. Okay, we're going to come back and do that as a second pass. So add some glue to the leading edge, and then across basically where the spar is, avoiding this center section, because we don't want to get any glue there. Now, the other thing you do not want to do, even as we're gluing the bevel part, is you don't want to get glue where these cut lines are going to be. If you do, it makes it a lot harder to cut it later, and doing your bevel then is just more difficult. So try to avoid throughout this whole gluing process getting any glue right on where the bevels and cuts are going to be for the control surfaces. Okay, so as you add your glue, just try and keep that in mind. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and get my glue going here. So we're going to do just a little bit on the leading edge. I'm going to add some right here, and I'm going to add right on the bevel, right there. Okay. Now we're going to go ahead and fold both of these over. I had a little cut here, so I'm going to clean up these guys. They spilled out. Yep, nice and flat. Okay, so now that you got that glued, we're going to go ahead and now focus on the actual trailing edge, and then lastly on the tips here. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to basically run a bead of glue about 1/2 inch inside of each of the bevels. Okay, what that's going to do is then let us put the piece down and then slowly rock it. So again, we're putting the bottom on the table so it's flat, and then we're going to slowly rock and squeeze the glue to the leading edge, or the trailing edge, sorry, so that it's a nice flush finish. So we're going to go ahead and start on just one side, and again I'm going to try and avoid putting glue where the cuts are going to go. So I'll start just on this side here, I'll jump a gap and then get my next bead running in there. I'm going to go right to the tip there. Flip it over, we're going to put it flat now, and we're going to see how much glue I put in. So as I start to do that, I see it starting to spew out a little bit, so I'm going to rock it back and forth and massage it. What I don't want to do is let it squeeze out yet as it's really hot, because it's going to burn your finger, and we don't want it to lift at all. We want it to be a nice solid finish. So I'm going to keep rocking it until I get to the point where I can feel the heat through the paper, and I feel like it's not that intense anymore. So I'm going to go ahead and pick it up, and I'm going to finish this with my hand here, and I'm going to just squeegee all this off. Okay, the goal here is to close off the trailing edge as best as you can. If you have to go back and add a little bit more glue on any spots, that's fine. Really, this is just a slow process, so take your time. Don't burn yourself. But it produces a really nice result. So because I used the table for the initial rocking and the initial placement of the airfoil, I'm just now pinching in the air, so I'm not going to get an inconsistent airfoil as I'm doing this step. Okay, if I did the whole next one in the air, it's most likely that I'll push one way hard or the other, and that's going to cause the airfoil to be inconsistent. So you want to do the same procedure you did on the first side on the next side. Okay, so that one looks pretty good. I'll have to go back and touch up the corner a little bit, but it's not a problem. So again, I'm going to add a little bit of glue right in the middle, and then I'm going to skip where that joint's going to be. I'm going to add my glue right to the end. I'm going to go back to the table now, and we're just going to massage it closer and closer to the edge until I start to really feel that heat and possibly see the glue poking out there. There it is. Trailing edge came out pretty nice. Very clean. What I'm going to do now is go ahead and get these guys done, and this is just a simple, we're going to put a little glue in there, again about 1/4 inch, and then we're just going to squeeze it and taper the edges in best you can. Don't do it too hard, otherwise you'll start to crease the foam. So just be gentle as you're working it, and you can get a pretty clean finish. You will get just 1 or 2 little crinkles on the edge, the leading edge, but it's okay. Really, if you remove more foam there, you'd have a better chance, but it's not going to affect performance. It just doesn't look as pretty if you get too much crinkle. So on this case, I am going to hold it in my hand, and the important thing here is that I pick a side. So I'm going to pick the bottom for my thumbs. I'm going to do the same bottom thumbs on the other side. This is important because I'm going to be pressing with my thumbs to get a consistent shape on this on the tips here. So I'm going to kind of rock the foam, get the glue all squeegeed around, squished everywhere, and I start to see it coming out, but it's still very hot on my fingers. So I'm not ready to touch it yet. Give it just another couple seconds. Again, I'm pressing with my thumbs more than I'm squeezing with my pointers here. And now that it's about ready, I'm going to go ahead and start to squeegee it off with my fingers and move my pressure right to the tip so that I'm actually sealing it down. Just keep moving your fingers so that you get a good even spread of pressure. And what this should leave you with now is a wingtip that the bottom has a very slight rock up and the top then curves down to meet the seam. Really, this part is less important of doing it perfect, just as long as you do the same process on both sides. That's the more important part. If your bottom seems to wing up more, then wing it up more on this side as well. Just make them as consistent as you can. And that's why I say use the same bottom side right with your thumbs. Don't do it this way now, because you'll get the exact opposite. You'll get, they'll twist the opposite direction, and that's not going to be ideal. What you'll get is a plane that'll try to corkscrew as you fly in fast. So that one came up pretty good. I'll do the same thing on this side now. So there's that. Now the last thing we need to do is go ahead and do the bevels on it. So what you're going to do is take your razor blade, go ahead and grab a ruler so your lines are nice and straight here, and I'm going to go ahead and run my blade first just through the top sheet of paper. Okay, so I didn't go all the way down, I'm just basically doing a 50% score cut. Okay, I'm going to get all my lines cut with my ruler. So again, I'll just do little 50% score cuts there, just so I break through that first layer of foam and I get a nice straight line. Okay, last one here. All right, so I've got basically 50% cuts there. This cut and this cut will go all the way through 100%, so same on the other side. This one will not be 100%, so you need to feather this one. So I'm going to go ahead and finish my cuts here. This one's 100%, so make sure my blade's nice and straight. I'm not tipping it either way or the other. I'm going to go all the way down, and I'm going to do one swipe, done. That one's now cut. And I'm going to go on the other side and do the same thing. Push my blade all the way down. Now it's cut. Go ahead and finish these guys off. Put my blade all the way down to the table. Full cut. Okay. And now, be very careful because there is no second layer of inner paper here, right? Because we beveled all the way up to basically here, you have this outer sheet and this outer sheet and then just foam between it. So you're not going to feel another sheet of paper. If you feel another sheet of paper, you've gone all the way through. So you're just going to do light cuts, just dragging your blade. I'm not even really pushing, I'm letting the weight of the blade itself kind of do its work. And I'm going to go ahead and test this. I'm going to try and crack it open. I still feel a lot of resistance, so I need to go a little bit deeper. Let's try it now. There it is. There's my cut. Do the same thing on the other side. If you go all the way through, don't worry, you can just add some tape. It'll be good as new. There it is. There's my cut. Now, the trick to doing the bevels here is that one, you're going to bevel on the control surface. But what you're not going to do is just try to straight away bevel this, because you're going through two layers of foam now. And it's very difficult to get a correct amount of bevel because you don't know how much throw you need. So what I'm going to do is give you a little tip. So I'm going to take my ruler, and I'm going to come, this is a straight line from tip to tip. So I'm going to take, I'm basically going to create a bevel line. And this is just a few millimeters, probably about 4 millimeters from the 50% line to where my ruler is right now. And I'm going to go through and I'm just going to barely cut the paper. And I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to stop there. Okay, so I took that cut right up to the line because I need to go ahead and again clean up this section here. So just a small cut there, very, very small. Basically all I'm doing is cutting enough so I can crack the paper off. Okay, as I do this now, the paper and that first layer of foam are coming off. But I barely did cut it all. So you're left with a little gap there, and we're going to do the same thing on this side. We're going to do that. Now what you've just done is you've created a consistent bevel line. So the travel of each surface will be the same after you do your inner bevel. And this makes it really easy to get a really consistent throw on these double bevel, these double thickness bevels. So I'm going to go ahead and flip these over, grab my blade, I'll take it out of my holder, and I'm just going to focus on not cutting the center foam. And then when I do my cut, I'm going to keep my focus there, and then I'm going to bring my blade to basically rest along this line that we just created. Okay, that's going to give me the right amount of throw there. So I'm going to go ahead and start. Again, I'm focusing not to cut through the middle paper, and I'm resting my blade along that top cut. Go and finish that one. If you see any bulges, just go ahead and go back and clean them up. So again, what we just did is we have a perfect straight bevel line, and now we have the right 45-degree angle, and what you're left with is a perfectly sealed extended throw. And that right there is more than enough throw for even the high rates on this plane. If you want some crazy acrobatic plane, you can go even more, but based on the throw gauge that I have in the plans, you can do lower high rates, and this should be enough for either one. So we'll go and do the same thing on this side now. One thing you can do on a single sheet of foam is you can just take a barbecue skewer and just kind of open these up. I find on a double sheet it doesn't work, especially if you get a little glue involved, which is what that's hanging up there. You have to actually cut it. Now the easiest way to do this is to use your ruler so you get a nice consistent cut. On this one I'm going to cut from the stabilizer itself, not from the surface. So I'm going to bring up my ruler here, and I'm going to cut just basically a blade's width off of it. And again, I'm going to go straight down, make sure I don't cut at an angle. I need to go on a little bit deeper here. A little light. What that does is it just frays off a very small amount and should be just enough so that you don't have any catch anymore. And I still have the catch on this inside, but the outside looks a lot better. And that is lined up real nice on both of these. Yep, throws the same there. So I'm going to do the same thing on the rest of these. I'm going to go ahead and clean these up. So now for the vertical stabilizer, we're going to do the same concept of peeling this foam away. Make sure you've gone fully through the foam with your blade on the reference lines. Again, on the kit, they'll be there. If you're building from the plans, make sure you do that. And then go ahead and just peel away the foam. Now again, I'm going to take my blade and I'm going to go ahead and do my bevel. in the same fashion we did the horizontal stabilizer. There's one done. Go ahead and do the same thing on the other side. Okay, now that you got them beveled, we're going to go ahead and glue them together. So just like with the horizontal stabilizer, what we're going to focus on is adding glue to the papered areas, not to the beveled areas yet. And then again, avoid this center line where we're going to cut the hinge, okay? So don't put any glue right there. Otherwise, you're going to make your hinge very hard to cut. And then I'm going to do a little bit there. And a very thin bead on the edge, creating a gap there for my hinge. All right, so we're going to go ahead and lay this guy on. And really smush it around. We want to make sure is that it's aligned properly here, as well as around the edges. So now that it's dry, we're going to go ahead and get started on the bevel. We're going to work on the back side first, and then the front side. Because there is a crease already here, the cut, this makes it really easy to keep these separated and to focus on not getting any kind of curves and divots around this here. Okay, so you're gonna do these sections independent of each other. So we'll start on the back, and I'm gonna go ahead and add again about 1/4 inch in my bead of glue. Now, the thing to remember here when we're doing the actual gluing is you don't want to put it flat, because then you're gonna get a curve to one side or the other. So you actually want to hold it in the air, and you want to focus on pressing together evenly as best you can. If it's curved a little bit, it's no problem, but if you get a drastic curve, it's going to be like you have a trimmed rudder all the time. So let's go ahead and add our glue. I'm going to go right up to the top and stop. And then, again, I want to hold it in the middle here so I don't get any curve one way or the other. Do the best I can to keep it nice and even. I'm pinching right on the leading or the trailing edge. I'm not pinching in on the foam or in the middle. I'm pinching all my pressures right on to seal that off. Okay, if you press too hard where the glue is on the foam, you'll create huge divots. So there's the trailing edge. Now we just got to do the leading edge. This one's a little bit harder because there's less foam to work with. So you got to kind of curl down this beginning section. And I do this before there's any glue, just to start working it. Just start to work it. Don't press too hard against the table because you will damage your trailing edge there. But just work it. Okay, so now that you've got the leading and trailing edge done, you just have to pick a side of which side you're going to put the bevel on. I'm just going to pick this side as an example. Doesn't actually matter, just means which servo you're going to end up using as the rudder servo. So I'm going to go ahead and, again, just like on my tail or my horizontal stabilizer, I'm going to cut just a 50%. And then I'm going to go back with real light cuts as I break through. So I ended up with a camera issue and losing some footage. So I wanted to just recap kind of what I did on the vertical stabilizer to make sure you guys know what's going on. Nothing here is anything we didn't talk about already, but essentially what I did is I finished off all of the leading and trailing edge, and then I went ahead and did my bevel, so I have my deflection now. And the only thing I haven't done yet on my H-stab and V-stab is we need to do a hot glue hinge. Hot glue hinges are really important for durability and strength. As it is right now, this would probably last a couple flights before it started to delaminate on this hinge, and then maybe even rip and cause failure. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a little bit of hot glue and a scrap piece of foam and create a nice little seal here. So basically we're going to take nozzle of the glue gun and just put a very small amount of glue right on the center. And then we're going to take this scrap piece of foam and we're going to just smear it around and ultimately get as much as we can off, because we just want to create a very thin layer of glue. Now I'm going to go ahead and set this aside to dry. I'm not going to deflect that, otherwise it will glue to itself, and do the same thing on both sides of the elevator here. Okay, so we gave those some time to dry, and now I'm going to just go ahead and fill in this crease here on the horizontal stabilizer. There's a little bit of a crack there, and I want to make sure there's no issues with strength, so I'm going to run just a bead of glue on the front and back. On this design, the rudder actually, and most of the vertical stabilizer doesn't touch the horizontal stabilizer, so this section here is not going to be glued down by anything on the vertical stabilizer. So I want to make sure that's nice and strong before we join these two together. Now that they're dry, we're going to go ahead and join them together. To do that, we're simply going to insert the vertical stabilizer tab into the horizontal stabilizer. Now you'll notice when you press this down, if you don't do it flat, the rudder can get caught. You want to do it so that there is a gap between the rudder and the horizontal stabilizer. And really what you're looking for is this section here, that it should be flush here and not in the back. So we're going to add a little bit of glue just this section and in the tab hole to make sure it's nice and secure. So I'm going to throw some glue there, and then I'm going to put some in this hole on both sides, like that. And then we're going to go ahead and join this guy in. I want to make sure for the most part that it's nice and straight going this way. The alignment on the fuselage will help a lot. Really your main goal is just press a lot of pressure here so that it's flat, and then make sure you're not touching on the back there. And just to be sure that you're nice and square, you can grab some tape here and keep it squared up. That looks pretty good. Okay guys, we're going to go ahead and get started on the wing. Now this plane has two wing options, a basic wing and a speed wing. This section is going to cover the basic wing, and you can watch the speed wing build in another video. Now, one thing I want to note right up front on this build is that this wing is designed significantly different than a standard fold-over FT style wing. And what I mean by that is, one, there's significantly more 50% score lines, and we're not actually going to use a barbecue skewer to crease them. The airfoil shape is going to be formed without them being creased. So if you build a lot of wings and you're just skipping around the video, or you've already started on the wing, make sure you have not already done the creases, the 50% creases, because you will ruin the airfoil shape if you do that. So do not do that up front. Now, another key difference about this wing is, even though it's a basic under camber wing, you have a wood spar. The foam spar that is included is actually very flimsy. It's more for shape. The wood spar is what's going to give you all your strength. So this is made of 1/8 inch basswood, and you can get it from your hobby store in about a $2 strip that you can cut. If you bought the kit from us, then this is included. So to get started, we're going to go ahead and come to the wing, and we're going to do our crack over here for the leading edge, and then we're going to do our bevel. Now, I've included these on the plans to be a green line. On your kit, it may just be a pre-cut. You're going to go ahead and peel the foam away right on the leading edge, or the paper away, because just like on the stabilizers, this is going to give you the amount of bevel you need. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and grab my blade, and we're going to start beveling. I'm going to focus my blade to make sure I don't cut through the center, and then again I'm going to rest it against the paper line now. And this is going to force the proper amount of bevel, which then enforces the airfoil shape. This was done so that the airfoil is repeatable No matter how many times you build it or someone else builds it, they can get the correct airfoil shape. Okay, we're going to flip it over and do the other side now. Okay, so last step now before we do our fold over is we're going to go ahead and remove the foam from this section, because this is where your barbecue skewer is going to go. Now this is done to reinforce the wingtip. This gives it a lot more durability and just extends the strength of the wing. Okay, so now that the foam is cleared out, you're going to go ahead and put your barbecue skewer in and make a reference line for the length, and then cut that off. You go ahead and lay in some glue now. You want to fill this cavity fully. And take your scrap foam, push this guy down and really drive all that glue around. So while that's drying, we'll go ahead and take your other barbecue skewer and we're going to clean out the spar slots here. And you're also going to remove this longer one, which is for the wood to sit inside the foam. So the secret here to make these come out nice and clean is to take your skewer and go all the way down to the bottom paper and run a little line around it. You then can go under and scoop it, and it should just crack out as one piece. It's a little more tricky on the wood cavity here because it's so thin. We'll give it a shot. It wants to. There you go. Just running my skewer at about a 45 to break the foam underneath, and then it should pop out. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and test fit the spar. To do that, let's go ahead and crack it open. I'm going to use my razor blade here to make sure that it opens up real nice. I'm going to fold that over. Go ahead and glue it while we're here. Just a real thin bead of glue. We're going to go ahead and put this in place. Make sure it fits good. Yep. And we'll test fit our wood spar as well. Beautiful. So now what I'm going to do is we're going to go ahead and do the wing fold over. Holding the bottom down, we're going to slowly crack this over. And what you're left with is a perfect airfoil. See if you can see this on here. Beautiful and very, very smooth. The last thing we want to make sure fits right is your servo. This was designed around a 9-gram servo. If you have different sizes or maybe a different make than what I've used as a reference, you might have to open this up or widen it. But essentially, we're going to take out the foam here as well, just like we did with the spar slots. So I'm going to go ahead and run my skewer again just to loosen this up. It should crack out as one piece. So that's good. And then we're going to remove the paper on the top piece here, because based on how thick your servo is, you may have to remove this completely like you did on the bottom, or you might just have to melt it with your glue gun. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and take a look at the servo that I have and take a look. So this hole right here does not account for these tabs as well, so if you have them on there, you may have to make a little reference mark here and then add those. There really isn't any official standard here, so I didn't want to add the cuts and then not have it fit your servo. So I want to do that custom there, so that should fit real nice now. Yep, it is. And now what I need to figure out is how much of this do I need to remove. I'm going to start by just melting it. If you're running a standard like Hextronics or whatever, or a Tower Pro, I think that's all you have to do is just melt it. This way there's still some thickness there, but it doesn't mess up the airfoil when you do your fold over. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do my fold over, but while I do that I'm going to look down right at the servo area to see if it's actually sitting in this hole and how much of the spar is touching the rest of the foam, because it should be, the spar should be flush against the top wing, and then the servo should sit inside of this recessed hole. If it's not, then I need to make this bigger, or maybe take more foam out, or whatever it might need to do. So I'm going to go ahead and take a look as I fold it over. Mine definitely needs a little bit more removed, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. And I didn't account for those tabs either, so I need to go ahead and cut those in. I see little stress marks. Okay, so we're going to remove those, and then we're going to melt a little bit more on this top area here. Okay, go and take a look again. There you go. Fits nice now. So now the last thing you need to decide before you close the wing up is whether or not you're going to use a Y cable or an individual lead. I like to run individual so I can control my ailerons independently on my radio, but you're welcome to use a Y cable here as well. Once I get that connected, I'm going to go ahead and add a little tack of glue just so I know that this isn't going to go anywhere. Looks good there. I'm going to go ahead and pull this guy out. I'm going to glue him in place. Put a little bit of glue on the paper. Just kind of smear it around. I'm going to take the wood out here, and I'm going to glue in the foam spar. And make sure it left a channel there. It did, we're good. Take it out. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to do the same steps on the other wing, and then we're going to join the bottom halves together. So go ahead and repeat these steps on the other wing half. Okay, so you have both wing halves up to the same point. You've got the spar glued in, you've got the servo glued in, you've got the extension connected, you've done your fold over, you have your barbecue skewer in, and you have your top wing servo hold melted and adjusted properly. So now what we're going to do is we're going to line up these two bottom halves as perfectly as we can to make sure that this section here is in line, the spar, the wood spar hole, and then the leading edge. If those all look good, then what we're going to do is add a bead of glue here and sandwich them together. So I'm going to go ahead and start on this one half. Now you definitely are going to put some glue on the table doing this. It's okay. It's kind of unnecessary. So I'm going to put this first, one like glued down first, and then use the one that's not glued to move around and find my sweet spot. Now I'm going to grab over here on the wingtip side and smash it together while holding it flat. Now once I know it's good, I'm going to go ahead and let it shift all the way over to the left so that it breaks that glue that hit the table. Don't want to permanently glue it there. And I'm holding everything flat right now. Alright, now that that's done, we're going to go ahead and add a bead of glue here. And we're going to squeegee that off. Careful not to get any in the wood spar cavity yet. All right, so we're about to do the fold over now, but the first thing we have to do is glue in 1/2 of this wood spar. So what I mean by that is we're going to place it in one side of the wing, and we're going to push it all the way down to the foam. So the wood and the foam spar should have the same gradual taper. Okay, it should be perfect there. As long as that looks good, I want you to go ahead and pull it out. We're going to add a bead of glue for the wood spar. Now again, you're going to want to push this all the way down flat so that the foam spar and the wood spar have the same exact taper. Okay, now that that's dry, we're going to go ahead and do the same thing on the other side. Now this time it's a little bit harder because the wing's not glued together and you only can reach about half of the area. So we're going to fill in the crevice as best as you can and then glue on the outside of this part of the wing. So here we go. Filling in the crevice. And then on the outside. And now when we push this down, we're going to use the spar to lift up this other side of the wing. And we're going to focus all of our pressure on the wood spar while this glues into place. And if you notice, the wing is now up. It's permanently dihedraled. You cannot separate it. If you try to push anywhere when you have this side of the wing flat, you will crease the foam. It will not. The wood is not going to break under normal stress. So just be very aware now that you have to be careful as you handle this wing because it is formed. So doing the fold over is a little tricky because you can't really do both at the same time. Okay, so that's nice and glued in place. So the way this is going to work now is we're essentially going to do one at a time with the glue, but we're going to fold both over to make sure that our center alignment is correct. If you do just one, you can end up tweaking the trailing edge to the left or to the right too much. So as a guide, you want to bring them both over so that the center line is proper. If you move it too far to the left or right, you're going to end up tweaking the entire airfoil, and the plane's going to have some weird behaviors you have to trim out. So to do this, I like to start with the side that has my servo hole in it. So in this case, it's the left wing. So I like to get those fed through as best I can so that they're out of the way. Because once you get this wing folded over, then you don't have to worry about it anymore on this side. So I'm going to get those started just so they're there and I'll have to fiddle with them once the glue's hot. And then what I'm going to do is make sure I have enough glue. If I don't, I'm going to have another one on hand because you will take a lot of glue here. So the way this is going to work is you're going to do the leading edge. You're going to spread some glue on these 50% cuts, and then you're going to spread some glue on these 50% cuts. When we added all these additional cuts, the airfoil is very nice and smooth, but the wing is actually weaker to torsion and twisting this way. And so to give that strength back, we need to add glue to bond to that foam so it's not going to be twisting. I'll give it that rigidity back. So if you don't do that part, the wing will have some twisting behavior that is not good for flight characteristics. So make sure you add, we're going to do the leading edge, and then we're going to basically smear glue all over the rest of this section so that it hardens to a nice shell. And then of course we're going to add glue to our spar as well. Alright, let's go ahead and do this. Get the guys out of the way there. And we're going to start with the leading edge. Then I'm going to do my smear of glue here, and smear of glue in here, put some on the servo, put some on the top wing. There. I'm going to take my squeegee and just kind of move this stuff around here just to spread it out. And then again, we're going to do both of these at the same time so that my alignment is good. My center alignment. Once I know it's good, I can then focus my weight on just the one wing. Okay? Make sure you put pressure where the servo is because you need this to be nice and flat. Okay, so now that your one side of the wing is done, we're going to do the same thing on the other side. Now that both halves are folded over and glued, we're going to go ahead and clean up the trailing edge. So flip it over, and then we're just going to run a bead of glue right down on one side. We'll hold it and do the other side as well. So you can get a nice bead of glue going. All right, now you're going to go ahead and repeat the process on the other side. Now if you'd like, I did leave a little bit of a gap here in the center between the two wing halves. This is so you can get some glue down in there. It's a little hard to glue it while you're folding it over, so I left it a little bit wide so you can come back with a bead of glue. But really it's not necessary if you're running the wood spar. The wing's just not going to have any flex in it. Alright, so the last thing we need to do is we need to go ahead and cut out our ailerons and make sure that they're have the proper throw. So go ahead and crack those open. And grab your razor blade. We're going to go ahead and do a bevel on those. Okay, and then we're going to go ahead and do a hot glue hinge. Keeps it real durable. And honestly, I wouldn't fly without doing this. So make sure you're doing the hot glue hinge. Okay, let that dry, and then go ahead and repeat the process on the other side. One thing that seems to work really well on these basic wings is you take a barbecue skewer now and you just run about 50% of the way into the foam on both sides. And this is usually enough to clean up any additional dragging that might be there. There you go. The wing's done. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and join the wing to the fuselage. I like to do wing first because you can adjust the tail feathers to make everything square a lot easier. So yeah, let's go ahead and glue this into place. Now the wing itself has 4 notches that match up with the cutout here, and this should be nearly identical to the airfoil, so that it should be nice and clean and flush. So what we're going to do is do a quick test fit to make sure everything lines up before we glue it. Now the really nice thing about these notches is everything is square. You don't have to worry about is the wing tilted any direction or whatever. It fits really nice and snug. And I'm looking down at it and it's spot on. It looks really good. So I'm gonna go ahead and pop it off and we're gonna glue it on. So now to glue, I'm gonna add glue on my fuselage to each of the sections here. So I'm gonna go ahead and grab a big bead of glue across each of these sections. Alright, make sure you feed your cables through. And if you have a piece of scrap foam, go ahead and clean up any glue that may have smeared off there. And what I'm looking at now is I'm looking down the fuselage, and I want to make sure that wingtip to wingtip, everything is square with the fuselage, so it looks nice and boxed. If you look at the airfoil joint here to the fuselage, it's perfect. Matches up perfectly. If for some reason your wing came out different, which it shouldn't, but it can, you can adjust the fuselage so that it's nice and flush. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of glue on the leading edge tongue here and on the trailing edge. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and join the tail feathers. So we already glued the horizontal and the vertical stabilizers together, and now we're going to go ahead and connect them up on the fuselage. Everything should line up real nice and smooth. This piece is flush here with this former, and then underneath it notches right in on the H-tab. So once everything's in place, I'm just going to press it all down and make sure it's a nice snug fit. Looks like it fits great. Now what I'm going to check here is I want to make sure that the wing tips, if I drew a straight line from wingtip to wingtip and using the horizontal stabilizer flat surface, they should be on the same plane. The horizontal stabilizer shouldn't be crooked compared to that line that's drawn between the wing. And looking at this, it actually came out almost perfect. Let's see if I can show you here. So once you're ready to glue, you're going to go ahead and add some glue this former here, this former here, and then on the back tail section here. Now it's really important that this guy is flush because the pod, or the hatch, excuse me, sits here. So make sure that you don't have any hangover on this side. And then make sure on the tail section it's nice and flat for the stabilizer. And I like to go back at the very end and add one more bead of glue on the outside, just so I know it's nice and secure. So now that you've got the plane pretty much fully assembled, we're going to go ahead and put in the elevator and rudder servo. Now if you remember, I had you drill out one of the servo arms a little bit larger so it can accommodate 2 push rods. So make sure you can identify which one that is, because we're going to start with that one. It's really important because whatever side your bevel is for your rudder, you're going to put the elevator servo on the opposite side of the plane. So in my case, I beveled the left side of the rudder, so I'm going to put my elevator servo on the right side. Now, the way this is going to work is I'm actually going to put it in only a little tiny bit to start with. So as I feed the cable into the hole and then start to seed the bottom of the servo, I'm not going to push it all the way down in. And you'll notice once this sits all the way in the slot, the servo arm where the push rod's going to go is going to be almost underneath the vertical stabilizer ridge. So we have to connect up the wires, the push rods here, before we sink it all the way down in. So now with the servo staged, we're going to go ahead and widen the fuselage holes that act as the exit and guide holes for the push rods on both sides of the fuselage. So to do that, we're going to go ahead and flip the plane on its side, and you'll notice there are holes on each side per the plans. You're going to go ahead and poke that with a barbecue skewer, and then bend the foam back until you get the angle that matches the push rod. You're going to go ahead and do that on both sides. Okay, so you're going to go ahead and take one of your coffee straws now, and we're going to feed it in through the fuselage hole. And we're going to do this on both sides. Okay, we'll get that in place, and then what we're going to do is we're going to take one of our push rods for the elevator servo, and we're going to put it through another coffee straw there, and then we're going to feed this through. There's a hole in the middle of this former, and we're going to feed it right through. And the trick here is now we're going to try and feed this push rod into one of the straws that we just put through the fuselage. Okay, so now my push rod is all the way through. I'm going to go ahead and push this coffee straw through the hole. And now what I want to look at is the distance between the coffee straw and the servo arm. I want to have about 2 inches, so about to there, of exposed rod. So I'm going to keep it right there and just make a mental note of where this is going to be. And then on this other side, we're actually going to look at and see how much of the coffee straw is exposed here. Now, same idea, we need to make sure we have enough enough rod exposed so that when I pull my control surfaces, I don't hit the straw. So I'm going to actually have to cut this one, and I want to cut it back so it's only sticking out about to where the barbecue skewer is. You can see that through the bottom here. So we're gonna go ahead and cut this straw about 1 inch off of it. So I'm going to pull this one off. I'm going to grab some side cutters here, and we're just going to cut this. Push it back through. I want to make sure now it meets up. So I've got about 2 inches there, and then I've got about 2 inches there. Okay, so now that this is in and we have the proper alignment, we're going to go ahead and use a little glue to tack this in place. And then on the other side, we'll cut the straw. First, we'll cut that inch off, and then I'm going to feed the other push rod through so that we can glue the center section of both the straws once we're done. So now that the 2 exit coffee straws have been glued into place, we're going to go ahead and glue in the forward ones now. Now, before we do that, we want to make sure that the coffee straws are butted up against each other. Now, I have a little bit of a gap right here, so I'm going to go ahead and slide that one forward to make sure that they're nice and snug. These coffee straws really give the push rods a little more strength and rigidity under load. So once those are squared up, I'm going to add a little bit of glue right in here on this front side. Now make sure your push rods are both on the same side of the vertical stabilizer ridge. Otherwise it gets difficult to move the straws around once you've glued them. So get them on the same side and throw in some glue to hold that in place. So now we're going to go ahead and connect the control rod to the servo arm. So grab a pair of pliers and push the control rod to the point where it's got about 1/4 inch of overlap. And then you're just going to give it a little L bend here. So once they're both in, we're going to just do a slight bend on both of them so they can't come out. Okay, looks pretty good to me. So we're going to go ahead and glue the servo in place. I like to add glue on the back side, underneath the tabs, and then press it into place. So it looks like the gauge of wire I'm using is a little thicker than expected, and so the underside of the vertical stabilizer ridge is in the way of clean travel. It's no problem though. I'm going to take my razor blade and just cut out a little notch. Won't affect the plane at all. So let's move along to the rudder servo now. You're going to do the same thing where you're going to put it into place but not glue it fully in yet, because we have the same issue where the push rod can be obscured by the vertical stabilizer ridge. So once we have it in place, we're going to grab another coffee straw and feed it this time through the side of this back roof former here. And then we're going to grab our next push rod and we're going to feed it through the straw. On the rudder servo, you really don't need more than one coffee straw. You're welcome to put more and glue them in if you'd like, but really you only need the one. And it's going to get glued basically in the center between the servo and the rudder itself. So once you have it in place, you can go ahead and get your bend in your control rod. So I'm going to give myself my 90-degree L bend there. We're going to get it connected into the servo. And then I'm going to go ahead and glue the straw in place. And then we're going to go ahead and glue the servo in place as well. Okay, so with the servos in place, I'm going to go ahead and clean up the extra length on these push rods just so they don't get in the way as we're working on the rest of the plane. So I'm going to trim them just a little bit here. So we're almost to the end. The plane's looking great. We got to finish up with the poster board. So to do that, we're going to go ahead and remove the hatch if you have it in right now. And we're going to start on the tail. The tail poster board is this piece here. And essentially what it's going to do is it's going to sit flush up against this former and then up against the horizontal stabilizer leading edge. What I like to do is first kind of roll the poster board to give it a bit of a curve up front, so when you look at it, it should be kind of wanting to curve. Otherwise it may divot in, and that's really hard to fix on the fly. So start by pre-rolling, giving it a little bit of a curve up front so that it fits nice and snug. So the trick here is that you want to make sure you have enough angle on the poster board to give your ridge a little bit of that exposure. If you don't give it enough, then it will it'll look kind of funky. So the ridge itself should be exposed. After about an inch or so, it should be exposed. And the indicator I like to use is that my poster board tail section should be at about half height with the horizontal stabilizer. So if you looked at it from this direction, it would be about halfway down there. So to get this nice and solid and keep it square, while it's sitting here, I'm going to add just a temporary piece of tape on this one side, and then tape that down. And now I should be able to open this up, add my glue, fold it back over, and it should be nice and lined up. So we'll give it a shot. Now I'm just doing the ridge. I'm not going down on the fuselage itself. Now that the poster board is tacked in place, we can focus on getting the sidewalls really glued down. And this is where we want to take our time, because if you mess with the angle or crease the poster, then it's going to cause alignment issues on the top ridge. So what we want to focus on is keeping the glue applied from this side up to the tail. So we don't want to go backwards. We want to apply the glue to the poster board and then slowly work our way back to make sure it stays nice and smooth. So I'm going to do this one side at a time, and we're going to apply glue very thinly. Then we'll go ahead and flip it over, and we're going to try the best we can to run a nice, steady hand down the side. Then we'll go ahead and repeat the process on the other side. Now we're going to go ahead and glue down the top part, the ridge itself. Now, for those of you who built my version 1 of the plane, everyone said this is probably the hardest part, so I'm going to show you hopefully how to do it really easily and get a clean look. Basically what we're going to do is take your glue gun, and you're going to focus the glue not on the poster board, but on the ridge itself. So you want to get an idea of where the poster is going to sit against the ridge, and then you want to apply glue just below that the best you can. A very small amount, and then you're going to work it down, just holding it, again starting from the front section and working your way back. Because it's already, this part's already glued down. If you go the other way, you'll get a bubble, and that doesn't look good. So we're going to start from the top, work our way down towards the back, and we're going to focus the glue on the ridge itself. Go ahead and repeat the process on the other side. So that's it for the tail section. We're going to go ahead and move on to the hatch. So go ahead and grab your hatch and put it back in. Really here we're testing to make sure that the poster board that we just applied isn't hanging over. This looks nice and flush. But really what we need to do first before we work the poster board on the hatch is we need to take care of this hole right here. Now what I've designed here is a hole so you can put a magnet or some Velcro, and this is really just to give the hatch a little bit of friction so that it doesn't pop out during flight. It sits pretty snug, so I don't think you'll have any problems, but just in case, this is an insurance policy here. So I've taken a little strip of Velcro, just smaller than the size of the hole there, and I've stuck it together. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take off the sticky on both sides, and I'm just going to put it into the hole just for alignment. Okay, it's now in place. So now we're going to take the little piece that you cut out of the hatch plate and we're going to put it back in. Now this might seem counterintuitive, but I did this because I don't know how thick your magnet might be, I don't know how thick your Velcro might be, so instead of this being a reference line, I wanted to remove it all the way. So then we could put it back into place now on top, and then you can add a little bit of glue around this outside so that it fits. Now you have a flat, flush fit. The fuselage and the hatch top plate will always be flush, and it won't be sticking up in the back because you had a large magnet or something. So once you put that into place, we're going to go ahead and add a little bit of glue. just to keep this held down. We're going to go ahead and let that dry. So go ahead and grab your hatch poster board so we can get it aligned. Now, this is designed so you can only put it on one way. If you put it on the wrong way, the center former is going to be exposed. So go ahead and flip it around so you know what's going on. So the way this is going to work is the side with the tongue, the poster board must be flush on this side. The side without the tongue, it's going to overhang just slightly. So once you've got that identified, we're going to go ahead and add 3 drops of glue so that we can get this lined up. And we're going to match it up with the indicator lines on your poster board. That looks pretty good. So we're going to go ahead and finish off the glue by running just on one side at a time. We're going to run glue on the formers and then a little bit of glue on the side. Now what I like to do is put it down on the table and just rock it over until it's flat. Then you go ahead and repeat the process on the other side. So now for the canopy, I've actually included 2 options for you. You have the bubble canopy and then you have the traditional, more rectangle canopy. I'm going to go ahead and build with the bubble canopy, and I have here a piece of clear overhead transparency that's designed for laser printers. And this is important, the laser printer part, because that means it can withstand heat. So when you put glue on it, it doesn't warp and bend. So this is really cheap. You can buy it on Amazon, a pack of 50 or whatever for like 10 bucks, and makes really nice canopies. This stuff is pretty flimsy by itself, so I'm going to be using the poster board frame that I've included in the plans to give it some more strength and really make it look awesome. So to do that, we're going to go ahead and put the clear plastic there down on the table, and we're going to get our poster board pieces in place so we can glue them on to the canopy. Now this may not be very easy to see on the film, so I apologize, but hopefully you can see the plastic there. What I'm going to do is take the rear piece here, make sure my alignment's good, and then I'm just going to add a little tiny bit of glue so I can get this glued on there. So we're going to take our glue gun, and we want a very thin layer of glue, and then we'll go ahead and get that pushed down. There it is. And we'll just keep going piece by piece to get this all framed up. Okay, so now that your canopy is all framed up, we're going to get it glued together. Now the trick to doing this is using Scotch tape. What I'm going to do is take a little bit of Scotch tape, and I'm going to put the tape on the outside so that I can run glue on the inside. Once you're done, you take the Scotch tape off and it looks really clean. So to do that, I'm going to take a little piece of Scotch tape on the front section. I'm going to go ahead and fold these pieces together to close up that gap. And once I like where the fit is, I'm going to add a little strip of Scotch tape right to the outside. Then once I flip it over, I can go ahead and run a bead of glue I'll go and hold that flat and let it dry. Now for these mid sections, we're actually just going to glue the poster board piece here, so we'll line those up just like we did before. We'll flip it over, and then we're just going to add the glue right here on the bottom. So you'll go ahead and repeat this process on all the different sections. So go ahead and peel off the tape once you're done. So once you get all the tape removed, you want to follow with a pair of scissors and just clean up any areas where there might have been some overlap that was unintended. So now that your canopy is done, we're going to go ahead and attach it to the hatch. So go ahead and grab your hatch, and remember the tongue, the side with the tongue is the forward section, and on the canopy itself, the framed front here is the front. Now for placement, it basically sits square, just right in the center of both of these cutouts, so there's nothing too special there. And the trick to getting this lined up really easily is to get some Scotch tape and run it on one side. Get it all positioned where you want it, and then you can flip it over and we can glue around the edges. So we'll do that now. So now we're going to go ahead and finish off the poster board with the nose piece. And this one sits just overlapping this front former and then flush with the front of the fuselage. So to make this easy for alignment, I'm going to do the same trick I did earlier, where I'm going to take some tape and then apply this tape to one side so that I can get everything aligned, and then flip it over and do the glue now. So we'll go ahead and do that now. You'll want to stop about 1/2 inch with the glue. Ooh, it's hot. Now it's really important when you lay this bead of glue that you don't get any overflow on the inside here, because again the hatch is going to sit down flush. So make sure you focus the weight of your glue on the inside here rather than the out. So we'll get that glued there on top, and then we'll run our last bead of glue here. Again, stopping about 1/2 inch from the edge. And we're going to go ahead and fold this over. Alright guys, we're going to go ahead and install the wing root fairings. This is 2 pieces here, and essentially what you're going to do is use a little bit of tape for the guide like we did on all the rest of the poster board, and glue it into place. I'll go ahead and show you how to do that. I like to put a little bit of tape on the wing side and then get it positioned. Just like that. And then I'll flip it over, add a little bit of glue. Just hold it in place here. This should curve just slightly between the wing and the fuselage. Think of it like a skateboard ramp or something. You don't want a lot of curve there, just enough that it's not a flat, a flat plane. So once that's glued, you can go ahead and remove the tape. So now to glue the top section, we're going to peel it back just a little bit and add a small amount of glue on the fuselage. But we're going to do this from the underside. We're going to go ahead and tip that open just a little bit, and we're going to add a little bit of glue right where it's going to sit. Basically just create a little shelf that the glue and the posted board will use. So there's your wing root fairing. You'll go ahead and do the same process on the other side. So guys, that's it. The plane is built. All you have left is to finish hooking up your control surfaces and setting your throws per the gauge and the plans. You want to build your power pod and get your electronics installed. Because of the hatch, your battery can sit pretty much anywhere to get the appropriate CG. And in terms of power plant, this plane can run off of the Power Pack C or about a 250 watt motor on 3S. You want about a 9-inch prop as well. But it can run up to about a 500 watt setup with this build. Because we have the reinforced wing with the wood, it's very sturdy. If you want to go crazy and build a very fast version that can go over 120 miles an hour, you'll want to build the speed wing, which has the aluminum in it. So please guys, let me know what you guys think of the build. I'd love to see pictures, post them online, send me a message. I'd love to see what you guys have built. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'll be doing more designs, more builds, more how-tos coming up. So I'd love to see you stick around. And yeah guys, thanks so much for watching.